Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is the show where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of property experts. And experts we have today, John Howard, property developer, author, mentor, investor. You don't like me mentioning the other bits, do you?
That's enough, I think.
That's enough, yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome, John.
Good to be back.
Good trip in?
Very good trip in. An hour from Ipswich. Nothing, is it?
Right, so we're on the Ipswich promotion day, are we?
We are.
Right, okay. Now joining John today is Vincent Wong, entrepreneur, co-founder of Property Wealth Dragons Group PLC. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
Good to have you back.
Lovely.
Great stuff. Okay, Vincent, you're going to go first, and your question is this. Given that the government is planning to introduce a prohibition on advance rental payments greater than a month, as a condition of any tenancy offer, do the experts think that this will limit the income potential for buy-to-let tenants? I ask because it would seem to take an opportunity to rent away from tenants who perhaps fall short of income requirements or perhaps have a poor credit rating relating to, I guess, rental insurance, I suppose.
So what you're essentially saying is that up till now, landlords can take more than a month's rent, perhaps maybe 6 months or a year's rent, because some tenants actually don't have the credit rating to be on a monthly payment. Well, the consideration is that if a tenant actually can't guarantee to pay you each month, and they happen to have a lump sum of 6 months rent, do you actually want those tenants from a buy-to-let investor's point of view?
Well, let me just come in there. So let me just give you a sort of hypothetical situation. Somebody's been working abroad, right?
Yeah.
They come back here, they want to rent somewhere, but they've got no track record here. And I think a lot of the insurance companies won't cover them on rental guarantees. So their only option is to say, well, I'll give you 12 months up front or so.
Well, that's true. But I think the way to get around it is to get a guarantor. But other than that, just because as a landlord you can receive 6 months or 12 months rent doesn't automatically mean that you're making more money.
It's a good tendency.
Well, there's a case where one of my colleagues had a property in Manchester, and he couldn't get tenants for a long time until some Asian chaps turned up at his doorstep and paid him 6 months rent in advance. Of course, he took it with glee until it was turned into a cannabis factory.
Yeah, well, that's a bit suspicious.
Yeah, so sometimes you always have to think,
why? I mean, my sister's a good example. My sister sold a house, and I advised her not to buy at the time because the market was, was very hot.
Yeah.
And for once, I got the advice right, so she's still talking to me, so that's always good. And she went into rented. And it was very competitive, the rented market, very competitive, especially for the detached houses and that sort of stuff. And she offered it. I said, look, you, unless you offer years upfront rent, you're not going to get this. So she offered a year upfront, and she went to the top of the queue, and she got the house she wanted to rent for a year. So that's an example where it works. It works for people. But of course, like you said, if they haven't got that money, a year up front or anything else, then you go back to the monthly.
Well,
but why should the government or this government or any future Labour government control that? It seems crazy.
Do you know, that's just exactly the point I was going to make, John. I worry about the government. I'm going to say governments.
Yeah, I think we have to,
because it's not just one.
Don't you think so?
Yeah.
If you say so. I think you seem to get your predictions right politically.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
And it's definitely looking in that way.
I think the latest prediction about a new government's not difficult. But
Are you going to defect? That's the question.
I'm definitely not going to defect. No.
Okay.
I'm going to stick at it to the end.
Yeah.
Who are you voting for then?
Hell yeah.
But I do think you're right, John. It's not the government's job to interfere in this. And I mean, what they've come out and said is, okay, well, we are going to legislate for this. We're going to stop it. But if the landlord and the tenant are in agreement, then we'll allow it. Well, how do you monitor that? I mean, it's just balmy, isn't it?
Crackers.
Well, the way to get around it is for the landlord to receive 6 months or years payment in a form of an option agreement.
Yeah. Good thinking. Yep.
Sometimes you just have to think outside the box
Yeah.
to get away with things.
Yeah, I do worry so much about government interference because they'll pick on housing at any time that they think they can get some sound bites out.
Yes.
I agree.
But actually, there's no coordinated policy. There's no forward thinking. We're doing very little at the moment to help young people get on the property ladder.
Well, I'd sort of disagree with that, but I would do probably. But I mean, Help to Buy helped over 700,000 first-time buyers.
It did, but it's not now, is it, John?
But it'll come back, I think, soon.
Do you?
Before the next election.
So are you talking about the potential Labour policy if they come to power? The interventionists?
Yeah, I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, they don't like people owning their own houses anyway.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough, I think.
I'm just not sure they get the advice from the right places.
I think they should bring back the free market economy, the laissez-faire kind of let businesses run themselves and
Absolutely.
based on supply and
I
demand.
suppose we would say that, though, wouldn't we?
Well,
Vincent?
we are business owners, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, jolly good. Thank you very much, Vincent. John, what would be the most effective thing the government could do to increase the flow of new homes to the market as an urgent remedy for the current housing stock shortage?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I recently did a 10-point plan of what a government can do to increase housing. I won't go for all 10 because I can't remember them now. But one of the main ones was to get rid of the SIL payment, which is Community Infrastructure Levy, which is now every new development, every council now from April has to charge it. Up till April, they didn't have to, but now they all have to. And that ranges from sort of £125 a square metre to £300 a square metre and more in central London, a lot more in London. And then, so when you're doing a new development, you've got all these extra costs that people don't realise. And at the end of the day, build costs have gone up substantially. And there's lots and lots of developers I know who are saying, you know what, John, unless you're building in an area where the resale value is sort of £400 a foot plus, it's just not worthwhile while doing it.
No.
So they have to do something. They've got to be radical. This government hasn't been radical enough. A new Labour government, really don't like private housing. They'll be very radical, I think, on social housing and build a lot of social housing, but I don't think they'll help the developers. And the other thing is, 1 in 3 houses over 1,000 square metres has to be social housing. That could, under the last Labour government, it was 1 in 3 houses, not 1 in 3 over 1,000 square metres. So, I mean, things, I think for the private developer, a new home developer, are not looking rosy going forward.
What's the latest situation with 106 agreements? Are they finished now?
No, the 106 agreement is still in place for some issues, but it is with the SIL as well. So, I mean, it's really, really challenging for any small private developer.
But what I can never grasp, John, is the government say we're committed to getting more housing. We're committed to helping young people get on the ladder. Now, the SIL tax, the 106, various other things, they're all taxes on property development by way of a simple explanation.
Absolutely.
And what do they think the developers do? Do they think they pay it? No, they just I'm building 50 apartments, so that's the 2 taxes, add them up, divide them by 50, and we'll add that onto the price of each apartment.
You say that, Stephen. You said that on different occasions. I'm not sure, being at the sharp end of it, which we are, that actually that is the case, Vincent, because at the end of the day, there's lots of property developers in the UK that go bust, and they go bust because they can't sell the property for what
because they haven't got the sums right, John.
Because they may not have got the sums right.
Running out of cash.
And they're running out of cash. We spoke earlier when we were having a coffee about that. Yeah. And it's all right you sitting there saying that, but when you're at the coalface, I think it's a very different proposition. And the idea of the 106 was the 106 was meant to replace the SIL, but there still is a 106 on certain occasions. But yeah, it's very tough. But that would certainly help, wouldn't it?
You're talking about easing the housing problems in the UK, but the last time I checked, there are almost 1 million empty homes in the UK. So why can't the government make it easier for developers to get their hands on them and develop them, which will be cheaper than building them from scratch.
But I suppose empty homes is a result of us having a fantastic legal system which protects you if you buy homes. It's safe, so we get a lot of foreign investment in London. I mean, you know, if you go and invest in an apartment block in Russia, you know, you can buy it, you can get all the papers you like, but you still might have somebody turn up at the front door and say, no, you're not owning this, we are. So we're not in that kind of society, we're in a totally different kind of society. But it does encourage people just investing and leaving.
Yeah, but it's not all about London, is it? You bang on about London, Steve,
Well,
as if it's the only place in England. It isn't.
Where else is it?
There's more.
That's Milton Keynes.
More people that live outside London than live in London.
No, but
surprisingly,
this applies. Empty homes applies the same in Birmingham, in Manchester.
Yeah, I agree. But Vincent makes a good point. You know, there's a million empty properties in the UK, and by the way, a lot of these housing associations have got plenty of empty properties that they're looking to sell and looking to do things with. They're very, very slow at acting.
They sell a lot through auctions. You want a good deal.
They do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. On that note, that's all we've got time for in this half of the show. So join me again after the break when we'll be asking Vincent and John more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and I'm joined by Vincent Wong and John Howard. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
Vincent, when purchasing a buy-to-let property, what would the panel suggest are the most important criteria to consider? After giving advice on this, would they think that a funding body would concur with their suggestions, or would a bank's priorities differ?
For me, there are 2. The first one is definitely the cash flow. You know, say that if cash is king, cash flow is King Kong. So when you're buying property, make sure that you're paying your mortgage and all the expenses, you're left with a positive cash flow. And never invest with a negative cash flow situation on the assumption that you're going to make a lot of money in the future. Developers will promise you the world that capital appreciation is going to make up for your losses in the meantime, but that speculative is very dangerous. So that's the first one. The second one for me is being able to give the property an uplift so that you can refinance and pull your deposit back out. For me, that is the objective, because I'm here to build a portfolio. I think the days of owning 1 or 2 properties so you can manage and make a few hundred quid is just not going to work anymore. So you have to make sure that the property has a development potential, or you're paying a good price, knowing what it is really worth. So getting good value. And so with the banks like that, well, firstly, banks don't care if a property has got good capital appreciation potential. They look at the cash flow. So therefore, you have your mortgage cover. So on a buy-to-let mortgage, they give you 1.2 usually. So to make sure that whatever rental you get will cover the rental interest. And also, when it comes to developing a property to refinance, banks love it, especially commercial banks. So for those more seasoned property investors, after you've got at least 4 buy-to-let properties, you'll probably move on to commercial finance. And they would love the fact that you're experienced and they can loan you money and you're secured on the development and everybody's happy. So these, for me, are the 2 criteria.
Yeah. I mean, actually, you tied that in very well to the question, which is, will the banks concur with your view? And I think you're on the same page there, aren't you? But it's quite interesting. I can remember some years ago when it was a favourite thing of developers to do, to say, "I will guarantee you a rental income for 2 years," or at a certain
Not
level.
knocking the developer again.
No, I'm not knocking the developer. But what I'm saying is, a lot of people took that and they said, "Oh, well, look, if the developer's guaranteeing is 6-8% or whatever else, they must have a lot of confidence in the property."
They just want it sold.
No. It's a mouse trap.
It's an absolute mouse trap, isn't it?
But the one thing I would also say, I think your answers were spot on, Vincent. The other thing I would say is that always keep the property occupied.
Yeah.
Because actually, if you have a 6-week void, that kills any extra rent you were likely to get anyway. And I always remember Granger Trust. Years and years ago, they have a very sort of 95% occupancy rate. And I always said to one of the directors there, and they've got 20,000 properties or something crazy, why are your rents so competitive? And they said, well, we want people to remain. We don't want any vacancies, because the vacancies, as soon as you've got a vacancy, you might have to refurbish it a little bit. You've got a void, you've got this, you've got that. Keep them occupied at all cost.
Yeah, that's also true. But also, if you have to replace a boiler, it's going to wipe out probably 6 months of your cash flow in one fell swoop.
Absolutely.
What I have to say is maybe explore flipping some property deals that you don't want, that come your way.
Yep.
And I believe, and it's true, that serious property investors don't rely on the rental income alone to survive. You want to be asset rich and cash rich, not asset rich and cash poor, which is what we see in a lot of buy-to-let investors.
I agree entirely with you. The biggest thing, I was always taught from a very early age by two very successful developers when I was about 18 years old, always keep your money moving. Yeah. Always keep some money coming in. Yeah. And I think a balance of investment and trading is the perfect balance.
Yeah. I can remember, John, some years ago, friends of mine who were actually some
really?
Some no, they were in the football game like you were at one time, and they both said to me, they said, we've invested our money well, we've got a huge portfolio of commercial property, but we are sick to death of having assets and no money. Because of voids, because of difficulties. Yeah. And it's hard, isn't it, to create that balance between being asset rich and having the cash rolling in.
But a lot of the what I call new investors these days have come from other businesses. Of course, have got successful businesses or successful jobs. It's important that they keep those jobs in a way, because they have that lifestyle that they don't need to drop their lifestyle. They can do property on the side. Yeah. And I think they've got the perfect balance, really.
The other thing is, again, I've talked to a lot of quite successful portfolio owners, and as Vincent's point was, just a slightly different reason, but he made the point, don't be frightened to ditch part of a portfolio. If it's not working, get rid of it. Yeah. Get rid of it. Well, don't stay with it. There's no emotion.
It is vanity, isn't it? I hold a lot of assets, but in business we say that revenue is vanity,
profit is sanity,
and cash is king, right?
Cash is king, So, spot on.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that, Vincent. John, travelling the country, I see a lot of stalled property developments. Do the experts think that this is caused by a nervousness in the development world about being able to sell their completed product? Or is it perhaps the spiralling material costs casting doubts on the development's anticipated profitability levels at any one time?
Well, I think there's two sides to to the story, really. One side is that as soon as the market takes a dip, if you follow what the top 10 house builders do, you won't go far wrong. And the first thing they do, as soon as they see a dip in sales, a dip in interest, is they stop building. They don't go on to a second phase. They get the first phase finished and they shut the shop until they've sold the first phase. So as soon as their reservations drop, because they don't like building unless they've already got a reserve on it, as soon as that happens, they shut the shop. And if you can follow what they do, they're the sharpest in the business. The 10 house builders are top 10 are the sharpest in the business. So that's one side of it. That's why you see sites that don't look like they're carrying on at the moment. It's because they've got stock to sell already. And if you look on their site, it will say part exchange available and all the rest of it, deposits paid and all this, because they need to sell and they can't sell. The other side of it is there is a lot of less experienced developers who can now borrow 60% loan to value to start with on the purchase, all the build costs, all the construction costs, which is all very well until there's an overrun and something goes wrong. And then they haven't got the cash spare to put money in to get the development over the line. And that's happening a lot. And out of the last 8 sites we've bought across the UK, 6 of them have been with receivers and part finished. And we buy quite a lot of that sort of stock. It comes with its challenges and it's not for everyone. But there's a lot of it coming on the market because, banks eventually pull the rug, and that's what's happening.
Anything to add to that, Vincent?
No, I'm just wondering why the people run out of cash. Is it to do with bad management, or developers don't raise finance to get the development over the line?
Vincent, what it is they're doing it on a shoestring. because you can borrow 100% of the build cost, they think that's enough. And it's not enough. You need at least a 20-25% buffer.
Being overly optimistic as
over
well.
optimistic about how long it takes to do,
Yeah.
what it will cost to do, how long it will take to do,
Yeah.
and not having a buffer of cash available to put into the project if you run into difficulties.
Yeah.
And those three things, we've had all three things over the last few years as challenges. And it's just, and materials going up in value, costing more as well. And it's just too much for a lot of developers who have not got the depth or the experience or the funds put aside to cope with it.
So development sounds easy, but it's not really.
It's not easy. It's not, and it's not for everyone. Some people are great investors and have got big portfolios, and some are developers. But the developing side of property is very different to being an investor.
Completely, I agree.
Yeah, but Vincent, you have interests around the world, let's say. Do you think we're going to have an explosion of material costs even greater than that we've seen already, simply because of the necessity of rebuilding in perhaps Palestine, rebuilding in Ukraine? Looks like Georgia's going the same way as well, doesn't it? Are we going to have a problem here with materials?
I really can't answer that because I don't do a great deal of development, but I would have thought there might be a knock-on effect.
You'd have thought so, Vincent, wouldn't you? I mean, if it's all supply and demand, and I know that 70% of the materials, building materials, come from Europe or beyond. 70% do.
When I asked the question, I actually was looking through your book, Vincent, that that one of the things that you say is do try and have an understanding of the commercial world worldwide.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Do try and understand, and I think we're ignoring a bit of a problem on the way. Anyway, that's all we've got time for.
That's cheerful. Well done, Stephen.
Yeah, that cheered us all up. So big thank you to Vincent Wong. Thank you, Vincent, for coming in. John Howard, thank you again for coming in.
My pleasure.
Good to see you. I'm Stephen Galpin. Join me again next time on Property Question Time. Look forward to seeing you then.